Hello everybody and welcome to our first tutorial on how to create a score in MuseScore 2. We're going to begin by opening up our desktop app of MuseScore, and one of the first things that we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a score, and I'm going to be showing you guys how to create something for various instruments. The first thing that you're going to do is whenever the program opens, it always starts with the Start Center here, and we're going to go into this Create New Score by clicking here on the plus button. And let's start out with our title of Practice Score 1. You can put subtitles in, you put your last name in, lyricist, copyrights, and when you click the next arrow, it's going to bring you to this screen here where it allows you to select what type of score we want to create. Now, we're lucky that MuseScore has actually given us a variety of preset things. So if you're writing or composing for SATB choir, we can also go down here into chamber music. It's ensembles for various string ensembles, wind ensembles, all the way to big band, jazz band, bluegrass ensembles. There's a ton of preloaded things, but most of the time we're going to be using this choose instrument function. And you can select your instruments through this drop-down menu here. There's another drop-down menu here with you can go with all instruments, jazz instruments, orchestral stuff, early music. We are most often going to be in the common instrument section. You can click on the little arrow and it will give you all the instruments under that category. For example, woodwind. Let's start off with maybe adding a flute, and we can also add something that is not a concert instrument like an alto saxophone, so we can see the difference between the transpositions here as well. So you can add your instruments, and once you've created your score and you're happy with everything, we can always remove them if you want by highlighting them and clicking the remove button. What you'll notice though is it doesn't let you remove all of them. It forces you to leave one over here in the instrument selection group. So if you do want to remove all of your stuff, you just have to make sure you add at least one that you want to keep, and then you can remove everything else. So we move on. Next, it makes you pick the concert key of the record or of the composition. So it's going to ask you to pick the key that you would like to start in. We can always change this, and one of the things we'll do in this tutorial is learn how to change it later on. But let's start with the default of concert C major. Next, we'll be able to change the time signature here. It can be in 5/4 or 3/4. We can go, if you'd like to use the shortcuts of cut time or common time, you can select those here. You can also add a pickup measure right now if you need to, and you can always add or remove measures later, but it gives you a stock 32 measures to start with, which is perfect for this demonstration. So we're going to finish here. And you'll see I have both instruments, my flute and my alto saxophone. And what I want you to notice is that the alto saxophone has 3 sharps in it, and the flute has none. That's because the alto is not a concert instrument. It's actually an E flat instrument. And what that really means is if I were to write a C in the flute part here, and if I were to actually want the same note in the alto saxophone, I would actually need to have a different note. Just so happens that the C on flute here is the same note as the high A on the alto saxophone. So not everybody knows that, and when you're composing for your first time, you may not know what keys or transpositions all the instruments are, but the beautiful thing about this program is it does it for you. So what we are going to do is we are going to, when we compose, we're going to want to make sure that we're actually in concert pitch. And what that does is it allows the computer to flip everything into C. So if I'm writing a song in C, I can click this button and it will actually treat all of the instruments like they're in C, but when it is time to print and hand the parts out to everybody in your class, you can click on this button here. It will flip it. It will actually transpose all the music for you into the correct keys, and then you can go and print the parts out, and everybody will be able to play the music, and it will sound correct. So we're going to use this concert pitch button, which is your best friend here, and we're going to take a look at everything and see. Now, for practice, we're going to start by talking about a few different things. First thing I'd like to do is talk about the selection tool, which is pretty much when you just have the pointer arrow. So I can click here and I can start writing or highlighting any measures I want. I can click and drag, or I can click, and if I hold down the Shift key, I can select multiple measures. So if you want to copy and paste or delete or edit multiple measures, you start where you want, hold down Shift, and click where you would like to end, and that will actually highlight all of those measures. All right. Now, in order to enter a note, we use this tool up here, and that is the note entry tool. So you're going to start entering notes, or the note input tool, and we're going to click on that. And once you see it turn light gray, that means the computer is ready to enter notes. Now there's two ways we can enter notes. The first way is by moving our arrow up and down and clicking the note in. So right now it's defaulted to a quarter note entry. So when I click on any line or space, it's going to input a quarter note. If you'd like to change the note value, you can click very simply on the different note sizes or shapes, and you can create half notes, quarter notes. We've got a whole note here. It's a double whole note you don't need to worry about. We won't be using these in our class, and we're going to be mostly using our whole note, half note, quarter note, and eighth notes. Now what's kind of neat is when you look here and you hover over the tool, you'll see a little number, and that number corresponds to the shortcut key. So if you're on your computers and you want to use an eighth note, instead of going all the way up here to click on the eighth note, you very simply just tap the number 4, the number 5, the number 6, the number 7, and those numbers will shortcut key to help you select the note you want to input. So if I type number 4, that moves me to eighth notes, and then I can click some eighth notes in if I want. The other way that we can enter notes is by actually typing them in using the keyboards on our computers. So if I wanted to type in the letter A, I simply just hit the letter A on my keyboard, and it creates an A right there on my screen. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. Now, you might find the need at some point to add a flat. So what you can do is you can click on the flat tool, or the natural tool, or the sharp tool here, and you can add flats and sharps to your score at any time. If you ever want to undo something, or you don't like what you've done, you can use this back arrow here. The other way that we can change the note to be a flat or sharp is when the note is highlighted. So for example, the last note I put in was this A here. All right, since that's still blue, I can use the up and down arrows to adjust that note. I can also use the left and right arrows to change which note I'm working on. So that's your arrow keys. They're super helpful if you ever want to run back and fix something. If you find that you forgot to do an F sharp, you can always go back using the arrow keys. The other thing that's nice about the arrow keys is if you want to work in a measure, or if you want to change your key signature, which we're going to do in a moment, you can actually move over into that next measure. And then we can use the palette tools over here, which are going to be in tutorial number 2, to do things like change key signatures and things like that. So what we've gone over so far is how to make a score, how to input different notes. Now there might be times where you don't want to put a note in, you want to put a rest in. So what you do here is if you hover over that, that's our rest tool right there. So right now, it's going to input a rest for the value of the note I have selected. So you'll see I've got it here with my cursor, so I can click that note in to the measure. If I want to add an eighth rest, simply click on the eighth note with the rest tool, and I can add an eighth rest. So that's how our rest tool works. So you select the value that you'd like over here with the note, and then you select the rest tool, and you can click that in at any point. So we've learned how to do note entry, we've learned how to do rest entry, we've also done sharps and flats with the tools up here, as well as using the arrow keys to select various things. That will get you started with your composition. The last thing I'm going to show you here is how to very simply copy and paste. So if you would like to highlight and copy and paste something from one part to another, you have to get out of the note entry section. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the note input button again. And you'll see once that becomes unhighlighted, I get my arrow keys or my arrow button back here. So I can now highlight by clicking on the beginning, holding down Shift, and clicking on the end, and I can very simply hit Control C, which is always the shortcut for copy, and then I can go down to the alto sax part and hit Control V, and that will paste it into the alto. Now, as we talked about earlier, when I turn this concert pitch off, it will show you what it would look like for the alto saxophone players. Now, if you're an alto saxophone player, you would know that these are scary high notes. So one thing you might want to do is you might want to move these notes down an octave. You can very simply do that by highlighting them and using the arrow key and pressing down 12 times. Or if you didn't want to use the arrow keys, you could actually transpose the whole measure by going up here to Notes and hitting Transpose. And we would want to take it by interval down, scroll to the bottom, a perfect octave, and click OK. Now I've moved just that measure down an octave. If you ever wanted to move the entire thing down an octave, you could highlight the entire section, Shift, click, and you could transpose the entire thing. This will get you started using MuseScore, and it will get us ready to roll for our first assignment.